Hello and welcome to our Patina Nation Coaching and Mentoring Community of Practice. I'm your producer, Jesse Casperson, Community Manager at Patina. A few housekeeping items for today. One moment as I forward the slide here. Before we get started, at the bottom of your screen, your controls should look something like this. Bottom left-hand corner is your audio settings. If you can hear me, you're all set. You have a chat tool, a raise your hand tool, and a Q&A tool at the bottom today. I won't ask you to raise your hand. I can't hear you and I can't see you, so if you have a question for our speaker, don't worry about using raise your hand. Go straight to our Q&A tool. This is where we'll handle all questions and comments, and we'll have our speaker address those as time allows. But feel free to reply to others and upvote questions that you'd like answered by simply clicking the thumbs up. If you haven't downloaded Zoom and are using the browser version, you may not have access to all of today's controls. If you have any technical questions, please use the chat tool to communicate with our production team and not our speaker. At the top of the window, you'll also see viewing options that you can change how you are viewing today's presentation. The event is being recorded and a replay will be available in coming days. I now turn the event over to Mike Harris, CEO of Patina Solutions.
Well, thanks, Jesse, and welcome everyone. We're really happy to have you on this webinar today, along with many other professionals like you from throughout the United States. We're very excited that great progress has been made in building this online talent community for independent executives like you, and we call it Patina Nation, as you know, and we're really glad that you're a member. At patinanation.com, you'll find a lot more information regarding our 401k plan, marketing tools and resources for you. We have an IT help desk and a lot of earning opportunities with Patina, and then, of course, other learning and development programs like the webinar we're doing today. Our guest today is Deb Schmidt. She's the CEO of Loyalty Leader in Milwaukee. She has 30 years of executive coaching experience. Deb's worked with hundreds of companies, including Northwestern Mutual, Miller Brewing, American Family Insurance, Kohler, and our beloved Green Bay Packers. She focuses her expertise to support the key objectives with clearly established outcomes to contribute to her clients' business goals. And in addition to on-site company programs, Deb has been a featured speaker at national conventions and conferences, and she is the author of the book, Building Customer Loyalty from the Inside Out. And her articles have appeared in hundreds of magazines and online publications. With that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Deb, and she's going to talk with us about boosting your coaching revenue through increased client retention. Deb, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mike. I'm delighted to be here today. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to open up the PowerPoint here, and we'll get started. All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about how we can boost our coaching revenue through increased client retention. Before I jump in, where is everybody joining us from today? We'd love to hear from you, find out where you're calling from or joining us from, and get an idea of who's all in our audience today. But let's get started. When we think about these coaching relationships that we have with our clients, one of the things we need to keep in mind is that when we are not actively coaching our clients, we need to stay engaged with them if we're going to continue to generate new business and referrals from them. Some interesting research, according to Bain Company, increasing client retention by as little as 5% can increase your profitability by 25 to 95%. That's pretty critical information. So we need to focus on ways, how do we keep our clients engaged when we are not actively coaching? Sometimes we miss tremendous opportunities for success and referrals if we don't stay in touch with our clients and begin to really establish our value beyond just our coaching abilities. So another statistic for you, the Gartner Group statistic tells us that 80% of your company's future revenue will come from just 20% of your existing clients. Very important to keep this in mind. I have clients, I've been in this business for a long time. I have clients that have been with me almost the entire time I've been in business. A CEO of a manufacturing company here in Wisconsin, I started doing coaching for him and his executive team 25 years ago. And he has stayed with me throughout all that time, even though he has now moved 3 times to 3 different companies as CEO. That's what I talk about when I talk about really engaging those clients, maintaining those relationships, and increasing retention. Because with every company that he takes me to, that opens up a whole new window of coaching opportunities in the new company environment. So we're going to talk today about how we can focus on building these long-term relationships with clients, even after the coaching. The other thing we're going to talk about that we can grow our clients' business and enhance their career success, because that increases their perceived value of what we bring to the table. So we've got to pay attention to some early warning signs that we may be about to lose a client. Some of the warning signs include being evasive about future projects. So you're talking with your client and you start asking them, well, what's going on in your company? What's coming up next? Are you bringing any new executives in that may need coaching? And if they're kind of shunning those questions and they're avoiding sharing a lot of information with you about what may be taking place in their company, that evasiveness could be a sign that they're starting to lose interest in your services, or maybe they aren't aware of all the resources and perceived value that you bring to the table. Slow pay is another warning sign. With my clients, they're usually really excellent about paying within the window of the billing, the invoice that I've sent them. If we start to see that people are lagging on their payments, again, that may be a sign that they're losing interest in you. And so pay attention to these signs. Another real key sign is if the normal routine with that client begins to change. For example, if you've been talking with them on a weekly or bi-weekly or monthly basis, and suddenly they're skipping those conversations, you're not hearing from them, maybe they're not following up with you on some of the things that you've asked them to do for assignments, maybe they're not getting them done in a timely manner, again, that could be a warning sign. A really big warning sign with coaching clients is when they stop taking your advice. If you've given them some advice and some ideas about what they could do differently, and they're not acting on those recommendations, again, that can be a real key sign that either they've shifted their attention to another coach. That certainly does happen. So oftentimes executives work with multiple coaches, and maybe they have found that they've got a greater sense of rapport or trust with a different coach, and they're starting to shift to that coach's advice. And then, of course, the big sign is silence. You're just simply not hearing from this client. So we need to pay attention to that, because that silence is an indicator that they may have already left you as a client. So what happens frequently is we lose clients and we don't even know we've lost them because we aren't staying connected with them enough to know that they're not even really in the picture. They've already moved on from us, and we don't know that until it's too late. So we want to avoid finding out by surprise that we've lost a client. So what do we do about that? Well, one of the first things we need to do is do an assessment of the buying motivation of our current clients. We need to know why they are working with us. And we don't ask all of these questions in one conversation, but we need to begin to weave these kinds of feedback questions into our dialogue with our existing coaching clients. So one of the questions I like to ask my clients is just very blatant. What do you like best about our coaching relationship? That's going to give you volumes of information, because they're going to tell you what it is about working with you specifically that they really like. That's important information for you, because that means that's something that you may want to do more of with them. So what do you like best about our coaching relationship? What's working for you in this relationship? Now you ask the really tough question, what do you like least about working with me? And if they share some feedback with you that maybe is a little bit on the negative side, maybe there are some things that they don't like about your style or about the way that you're working with them, invite that feedback. A lot of people are afraid to ask this question, but we need to know this information. Now, when they give you feedback, if it is some negative feedback, the last thing we want to do is get defensive or start explaining to them why we're doing things that way. We're simply encouraging and inviting their feedback. We're trying to learn more about ourselves and what works and doesn't work in that relationship. Then, of course, if they do give you some negative feedback, then ask the question, what would you like to see me do differently? Now, I have found that when I've asked my clients these questions, when I ask them what they'd like me to do differently, it's not big earth-shattering changes. It's usually really small minutia. It's things like, well, I would appreciate if we could reschedule our times at a different time of the day or a different time of the week because these are a little bit inconvenient for me. Or it would be really helpful if you could type up follow-up summaries and get them to me the same day after our conversations because that really motivates me to get the work done. So it's not usually these big earth-shattering changes, but invite this feedback. Now, again, this doesn't all happen always in one conversation, but at some point, it's important to ask our clients, what other coaches or consulting firms did you research before you decided to work with me? Now, why do you want to know this? Because we want to know who we're competing with out there. We want to know who our clients are looking at for this kind of advice and for this kind of relationship. So who else have they looked at? And then ask the question, why did you decide to work with me? Why did you choose me after you did this other research? Again, this is really valuable material because this information may help you in your marketing and branding initiatives. So if you understand why clients are choosing you over competition, then some of those reasons might be great marketing tools for you. And then finally, how do I help you to meet your objectives? What's working for you here? How am I helping you to meet your objectives? Again, this becomes a great tool for you in terms of marketing and creating your own materials later on. So really invite this open feedback from your clients. Have these conversations frequently with them. Bring it up periodically so that you know where you stand with your clients. The big question then to ask your clients is this: what would you tell others about my coaching effectiveness? Now, I love asking this question of my clients because if they give me a compliment here, that becomes a great testimonial that I can include on my marketing material, my website, in my webinars, wherever. And so I invite them, what do you tell other people? And if it's positive feedback, I will ask them, may I quote you on this? And 9 times out of 10, the client will say yes. And it's important if you do use a testimonial that you include the client's name, the company's name, because testimonials are worthless if there's not a name and a company attached to them, because that's what gives credibility to testimonials. So it's a great source of testimonials if you get positive feedback when you ask this question. So here are 3 techniques that you can use to begin to cement these client relationships. Number 1, you need to learn about your client's business and their industry as much as you can, about their business and their industry, along with not only their professional, but their personal goals. When I used to manage a sales team for a television station in the Milwaukee market, and we had, of course, clients that they would buy millions of dollars worth of advertising. It could be in a lot of different industries. It could be the automotive industry, the grocery industry, the legal industry. I had trade magazines from all of those industries because I needed to know what was happening in my clients' industries. I needed to have at least a fairly good understanding of what's going on in their industry, what sort of changes and challenges they are dealing with. You need to really know and understand your client's business. We've got to do our homework. The relationship with a coaching client goes way beyond that person. We need to know what that makeup of that company looks like, what challenges they're facing, have there been mergers and acquisitions, what's going on industry-wide, are there future changes in the works for the company? And then you also need to learn about their personal goals, not just their professional goals. What do they personally want to achieve? The next thing we need to do is we provide consistent, proactive communication with our coaching clients. We need to find ways to keep in touch with our clients that provides value for them. So beyond the coaching, sometimes we finish our coaching responsibilities, the contract has ended, and we aren't staying in touch with our clients. That's a mistake. We need to find ways to stay in touch, but we've got to make sure that when we do stay in touch, it's providing value. And so that leads us to the third step. How do we continually position ourselves as a valuable resource to our clients, even when we are not actively engaged with them? So here are 5 key actions that our clients want from us. First of all, they want us to spend much more time listening than talking. to them. And it's this active listening that helps us to learn a lot about their businesses, what's important to them, what their priorities are. Their priorities are very different depending on their personality and depending on their communication style, and again, depending on what their personal and professional goals are. They also want us to genuinely care about their business and their career goals. As I said, I've had coaching clients that have moved many times from company to company. And so I want to be part of the reason that they're succeeding when they're advancing their own personal career goals. I'm going to help them with that any chance I get. They want to make sure that their time is valued and not wasted. Obviously, every executive is a very busy individual. And so always thinking about, is what I'm providing valuable to them? Is it helpful to them? They want to be offered solutions, okay? And then finally, they want to be able to count on us to follow through on our promises. So that's really important to keep in mind, because when we make promises to our clients, we need to manage those expectations. I want to talk a little bit more about the power of a promise. When you make a promise to a client, whether or not it's even business related is irrelevant. You might have offered to get them a book that you think is a great book. Maybe you've told them about your mom's chicken soup recipe. But if you've made a promise to a client, you need to keep that promise. So you need to create realistic expectations for your clients. Don't make a promise that you can't deliver on very, very quickly with your clients. Because even if you think it was a small or insignificant promise, they have not forgotten that you made it. So be very realistic in the time frame for which you promised to get them whatever it is you said you were going to get to them, because you don't want to break that promise. We never want to ask forgiveness. And that brings us to the second point. If you know that you've promised something to a client and you cannot deliver in the time frame that you said you would deliver it, then you need to contact that client and change the expectation prior to the promised time and date, so that you are asking permission to change the expected delivery date rather than forgiveness for missing it. Because if you don't deliver on a promise when you said you were going to, what happens is you erode trust with that client. And again, it doesn't matter how small or insignificant that promise seems to you, they're going to keep a scorecard on you. And they're going to see, are you delivering what you promised when you said you were going to deliver it? Don't set your clients up to fail. And what I mean by this is, don't ask your clients to promise to do something or deliver something to you that they don't have time to do. So manage their timeframes with them as well, so that they aren't set up to fail. If say you give a coaching client an assignment and you want them to do some work, and then you want it to be ready for your next meeting, make sure that given their time frame and their busy schedules, that you're not setting them up to fail. You want to make sure that they have the time they need to actually complete that assignment, so that they can feel success every time they complete the next step in that coaching process. Provide continuous communication. If your client is expecting information or resources or material from you, and maybe it's taking a little bit longer to get it to them than they expected, you want to keep them posted on the status of what's going on. A client should never have to call you to find out the status on something that you're working on for them. If they have to call to find out where things are at, you have failed them. And so we need to provide that continuous proactive communication. If you do miss a deadline with a client, compensate them. Offer them a free coaching session. Maybe throw in some free material for them. Maybe offer to coach another executive on that team at no charge for 3 weeks, or whatever it may be, but compensate them if you do miss a deadline. And finally, remember they're keeping scorecards. So keep your eye on that score and make sure that those are positive check marks going on that scorecard. So when we want to position ourselves as a valued resource with our clients, we want to be available to our coaching clients anytime for this information. Client referrals, employee referrals. I cannot tell you how often my clients, even people that I'm not actively coaching or consulting at this time, will contact me and say, we're looking for a director of marketing. Do you have a great recommendation? They come to me for that. They come to me all the time. Mike's pointing to himself here, and that's because Patina is a great resource for those kinds of referrals, and I will support that in a big way. Client referrals, employee referrals. We want our clients coming to us because they value us so much as a trusted advisor that they're going to come to us for all kinds of information. This happens frequently. Training resources. Who's a great trainer, or what's a great training company, or who provides great training resources for us? Business builder tools. I am always looking for articles and information that I think can benefit my clients, and I send those to them without them asking for them. Frequently, I saw a great article that I think relates to your business that could help you as you're dealing with this issue, even if it has nothing to do with what I was coaching on. And then also, who are your circles of influence? Who's in your network that you could connect your client with that could help them grow their business? How can you benefit them through your connections and your circle of influence? So when I talk about being proactively engaged with our clients, I create what's called a Target 25 client list. I would encourage you to create a list like this. This is a dynamic list. It's updated frequently. You want to keep it up to date. You're changing it. It's dynamic. It's not static. So on this list, the first group of people you want to include on this list are your cheerleaders. Those clients that you've worked with maybe in the past or you're currently working with who just love you. And they're your cheerleaders because they are a great source of referrals for you. Clients and prospects who have potential for spending a lot more with you should be on this list. Who have you worked with, or who is a prospective client that maybe you've been connected with who can potentially bring in more revenue for you? They need to be on this list. Contacts that you've worked with who have great potential for referrals because they have a big circle of influence. They have a lot of collaborative partnerships. They have connections and resources so they can begin to connect you with their circles of influence. And then also on this list, clients who've stopped using your services for reasons other than dissatisfaction. Maybe they stopped using because they did a big career switch. Maybe they moved to another company and they just disconnected from you. These all need to be on your Target 25 list. These are people that you need to make a conscientious effort to stay in touch with, providing value on a regular basis. Value can come in a lot of forms. So I create for myself a monthly target benchmark plan. I need to have a plan in front of me to keep me on task. So this is an example of what a benchmark plan can look like. So if I want to make sure that I'm bringing in a certain amount of revenue each month, I need to know that I need to do these things that are on my template every month in order to keep in touch with my clients, my past clients, my prospective clients, and generate enough contact and value that people want to work with me. So I try to attend at least 2 networking events a month. And I will do that. I try to go to those events where I know my existing clients are going to be. So I find out what trade and professional associations they belong to. And I attend the events that I know they're attending because that helps me to reconnect with them and to begin to connect with their circles of influence. I make sure I reach out to at least 5 people on my Target 25 list every month. I will find ways to reach out to them. Usually it's a phone call because phone calls build relationships, or I might buy them coffee if they have time. Text messages and email, those are tasks. They don't necessarily build client relationships. So find a way to reach out to your clients, at least 5 of them, the people on that list. Some of them I maybe haven't worked with for years, but they are my cheerleaders and I know that they will send me business. So I make sure that they feel extremely valued and respected by me by reaching out to them. Because I'm a professional speaker, I try to make sure that I deliver at least 1 speaking engagement a month beyond those that I'm hired to do. What I mean by that is at least once a quarter, if not once a month, I will volunteer my speaking my speaking services at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, so that I can establish and brand myself as an expert with audiences where I know potential clients might be hanging out. So I go out and I deliver speaking engagement. It might just be a half an hour keynote engagement. It may be a webinar like today, but I will want to provide valuable information as an expert in my field to audiences whenever I can. And I will do several free programs a year so that I can engage with new audiences. I have a blog, an email newsletter. I send it out at least 4 times a month. I have about 5,000 subscribers to that newsletter. And I make sure that it's short enough that people will want to open it. And I also make sure that every time it goes out, there's an article with tips and valuable information in it and links to other resources that are free to the people that read that. I produce at least 1 or 2 webinars a month. I try to do a guest webinar like I'm doing today, and then I also do my own through Loyalty Leader. I submit articles to online publications frequently because that generates a lot of awareness of not only my company, but it also brands me as an expert. And that makes my perceived value with my clients go up. So by writing articles, by posting articles and tips on LinkedIn, LinkedIn is a powerful tool. If you're not on it, you need to be on it and using it to the maximum. And post articles. I post a tip every week on LinkedIn. I post articles at least every other week on LinkedIn, because what that does is it reinforces in my client's mind that I'm a valuable expert. So it's reinforcing it for them. So we've got the webinars. Oh, I've got webinars in there twice. I apologize. And then I also post tips on Twitter. And so look for ways that you can continually be out there in front of people, because that increases your perceived value with your existing clients while you're marketing yourself and your business. Now, when you go to an event, a couple of quick tips for you. You need to do what's called affinity marketing. Go to events where you can provide value at that event. So determine a key objective. When you go to networking events or association events, don't go in without doing your homework. Really have an objective in mind. What do you hope to accomplish at that event? Maybe there's one person that you need to connect with at that event, and that's your objective. Or for me, oftentimes my key objective is making sure that a client of mine meets somebody who I know at that event so that I can benefit them. Do your pre-event homework. Who's going to be there? What's the topic of the event? Where is it going to be held? Who's going to be attending, and what's their circles of influence? What do you need to know about that event going in so that you don't go in just hanging out? Don't head straight for people you know at networking events. Go, because what that does is it alienates from all the people that you could be meeting at that event. We tend to go to those safety zones. Safety islands or safety zones are people we already know. And that's why so many networking and professional association events, people call them cliquey, because people will go right to the people they know instead of trying to connect with people. So when you go to these networking or association events, put yourself out there, be approachable with other people. And remember, quality is much more important than quantity at networking events. Only focus on building a relationship and a connection with 1 or 2 people at an event. Don't flit around the room handing out your business cards, because what you really want to do is really connect with somebody. And even jokingly, if somebody makes a kind of a sarcastic remark about somebody, or they're joking about a company or some other person, don't ever engage in that conversation. I have seen those kinds of conversations come back to bite people frequently from networking events. So always take the high road, work on building a relationship, do your homework about that event, and have a clear-cut objective before you attend. Remember, when you follow up, remember that power of that promise. If you connect with somebody at an event and you say, I'm going to get you some information, or I'd like to schedule coffee with you, or whatever it may be, follow up the very next day. The faster you follow up, the more powerful that connection will be. Your follow-up doesn't need to be business related. I met an individual at an event not too long ago. He and his family had just moved here from Washington, D.C., And we got talking. He's a sales manager at a major global company here in Wisconsin. And he just transferred here from DC. And as we got talking, he told me all about his 2 little girls and how his wife was feeling a little bit lost because she didn't know all the fun places to take kids in the Milwaukee area. So the very next day, I followed up. I mailed him a magazine about a parenting magazine from Milwaukee. I circled all of the great places in the magazine that we used to take our kids to when they were young. And I wrote him a note, a handwritten note, by the way, a handwritten note naming some of the great things that we love to do with our kids and our grandchildren. And so I just made recommendations. I mailed that to him. He gave it to his wife. He called me a few days later. He said, my wife was thrilled. And by the way, I'd like to talk to you more about your sales training. So it doesn't have to be business related, your follow-up, but make sure it relates to a conversation that you've had with that individual. Customize your messaging when you follow up with people so that it doesn't look canned or template or, just staged. And then I always, if somebody sends me a referral or a business lead, I always send them a handwritten thank you note with a Starbucks gift card enclosed, always, when they send me a great business lead. And so I get a lot from some of the same people because they like Starbucks, but I never include a business card in those handwritten thank you notes because what that does is it implies a hidden agenda. So just put your name and your company and your return address on the envelope. Then they know who it's from. Send a very sincere handwritten thank you note for a great idea, for a business lead, for a referral, even just for having the time to chat with them. But don't put your business card in because we just want it to be a sincere, pure thank you. That will impress them, and it also sets you apart from your competition because a lot of people don't take time to do that anymore. So keep track of details. When you talk to people, don't just get their business card info. Include the date of your first or most recent contact with them, names of their associates, because I guarantee you with the way people move from company to company today, your coaching clients are going to leave their companies. So you need to have other contacts. You need to create relationships deep and wide in those companies so that you don't lose that company when your client moves to another company. And if they love you, they'll take you with them. Know what your client's expertise and interests are beyond the job. What's their community involvement? What boards do they sit on? I have a client whose son has juvenile diabetes. I donated to the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation every year $50 just to support his interests and what he cares about. Community involvement, their business, their personal goals, know their pets' names, know their kids' names, and make sure you use that information in your conversations with them and know what other organizations they belong to. Where do they have memberships so that you can learn about those associations and organizations. A couple of the most common networking mistakes that people make is that they network haphazardly. They just do it when they've got a little extra time. It needs to be built right into your client relationship building skills. This needs to be an ongoing technique that you use. You need to network very deliberately. You need to know where you're going, why you're going, who you're connecting with, and how you connect how you can connect your clients with potential resources and individuals that can grow their business or enhance their careers. The other mistake people make is they push their own needs. They go to these events and they hand out their business cards to everybody they know. So what happens when you do that? They see you coming, they start running. So don't do that when you go to networking events. So what I'd like to do to conclude here is basically the goal here is give to your clients more than you hope to gain. Be a resource to your coaching clients for business leads, for contacts, for job candidates, for career leads if they're looking, because many of our coaching clients are looking to make a switch. Maybe, and that valuable info, tips, insights, articles, anything that you can provide for them, and even training. And then above all, be there for brainstorming. Just be there so that they view you as a trusted advisor and a friend, so that they feel like they can contact you anytime just to brainstorm their next great idea. So with that, I'd like to invite any questions that any of you may have.
Great, Deb. I'm going to start off with some questions for you. What if somebody you're coaching in a client organization decides they want to leave and they're talking to you about leaving that company who's paying you most likely to coach that person? How do you handle something like that?
That's a really great question. And it's an important question because it certainly does happen to us as coaches. And it has actually happened with my clients, the company is paying for the coaching, but they also want to know that they have the best people in place and the right people in place for those positions. So sometimes what coaching does is it helps to wake up an executive to the fact that maybe they aren't in the right company. And if that's the awareness that they come to, that's an important consideration because that company, they're investing in this person because they believe that there's going to be some long term. If there isn't, it's important if we can help them get to that realization, that's actually benefiting the company. It's saving them money if that individual comes to the conclusion that this is not the right fit for me. Now, of course, we need to be very respectful of that company. So one of the things that I did in one situation like this is I went back to not the person who I was coaching, but the person in the company, because oftentimes they're aware of the fact that this may be an issue. And what I shared with them is that if they want some feedback, I will share with the company who hired me, the individual that you have me coaching is really weighing whether or not this is the right situation for them. And so, that is all I will share because obviously I don't want to break confidence. 99% of the time, the company already knows that. That's why they invited a coach in, because they're trying to figure it out too. Is this person right for us?
Great, thank you. How about your top 25? I really like that idea. Your cheerleaders. So what kinds of things do you take into account as you're starting to rank those folks?
That's another really good question. So there are people that have been my cheerleaders for years. Some of these people I didn't even coach. These might be people who heard me speak at a conference, but they just loved the content. And all of a sudden I find that I'm getting referrals from these people. So the way that I rank them I start with the people that have actually already given me some referrals. If they've sent business leads to me, I always, when people contact me kind of out of the blue, and they say, I always ask them, how did you hear about me? And I want to know where it came from so that I can right away get back to that individual to say thank you to them and get them their Starbucks gift card. And so, but I rank them based on basically how many times they've referred people to me. I also rank them on what they say about me to other people. So, for example, if my focus in my business is to grow my coaching, and executive coaching area of my business, if that's what I'm trying to grow and that's what that particular cheerleader is basically singing my praises about, they're going to move to the top of my list. But if I'm trying to grow, say, my speaking career, maybe I want more engagement speaking at conferences, and that person's promoting my coaching, but another person's promoting my speaking, well, then they might move up the list. So I base it on what they're saying, how many referrals they've sent me, and where I'm trying to put the emphasis on my business currently.
Great. I loved your schedule of the monthly communication plan and the benchmarks and that. Are there 2 or 3 of those that tend to work better than others?
Absolutely. My blog is the big one. I send that blog out with that article, and I immediately get a lot of emails from people. It's how I promote my webinars. I do paid webinars and then I do free webinars periodically. I pepper it because I want to draw in those people who don't know me yet by getting them into a free webinar so that they can kind of get aware of my style. So the blog, the newsletter, the email newsletter is my biggest source of leads for my business without exception. However, since I've started being very consistent on LinkedIn with these tips, I am amazed at how many people are viewing those tips. And of course, with every tip, there's a link to my website. So what's happening is I'm noticing, and I have a drop down on my website where people can subscribe to my newsletter through those tips. So what I'm finding is that you really need a combination. So I would say LinkedIn and the blog are my 2 biggest sources of leads.
Okay, here's a question. How does it usually work when an organization hires you to coach one of their executives? What happens if that individual doesn't want coaching?
Yeah, and that certainly has happened with us. So what I do is the first thing I do is I will work with the company, the person who's hiring me to coach that individual, and I will help them to develop language for communicating the coaching objectives to that person that's going to get the coaching. So I help them with language so that the person who is resistant to coaching, what they're hearing from their boss or whoever hired me, what they're hearing before I come in is how the company believes in them and is making an investment in their future because they think they have great potential. And so I try to reposition the coaching so that that individual begins to view it as a good, positive investment in their career success. Then what I do when I meet with that client for the first time, I reinforce that in my early meetings, and I spend the first one, maybe even two coaching sessions just working on building rapport and trust with that individual so that they like me enough to begin to want to work with me. And then again, if I'm doing my job right, I'm providing enough value for them that they're thinking, hey, this really may help me. But you do need to overcome that trust and rapport barrier first.
Deb, do you ever try to find new coaching clients sort of cold? Is there any, just you're trying to get more of them and you don't necessarily maybe have a connection to the company or the executive that might hire you to coach? I'm just sort of curious if you do any sort of, not cold calling, but cold reaching out.
Yeah, I did more cold reaching out early in my career. I've been very lucky because because of my speaking, I'm in front of a lot of people a lot. So I do get referrals, but here's how I do warm leads. I'll call them lukewarm because they're kind of cold. So somebody will come up to me maybe after a speaking engagement and they'll say, well, I've got this going on and what would you recommend? Well, there's my in. Okay. Now I'll say, you know what? Why don't we get together and let's talk about what you're trying to accomplish, what your key objectives are. And so what I'll do is just get together with them and I'll begin to build a relationship with them. And then I will begin to introduce my coaching. Now, the other thing that I will do, and I would say this is the closest thing I come to maybe cold calling at this time, is I will call some of my cheerleaders and some of my past clients and say, hey, trying to grow my coaching business right now. Is there anybody in your company that I need to be talking to, to identify additional coaching opportunities? Or do you have any contacts that I could use your name as a reference for to reach out to say, hey, Ken suggested that I give you a call. I've done a lot of coaching for him. He suggested that because of the changes going on in your company, you may have a need for some of these services, wondering if you'd be interested. So I will do those kinds of cold calls.
All right. Is there a best practice in your mind about how many clients a coach should be working with at any one point in time? Do you have sort of a rule of thumb on that?
My rule of thumb is only take on as many clients as that you can keep every single promise you make to them. And so some clients obviously are more high maintenance than other clients. If I'm with a really high maintenance client and I know they're going to need a lot of my time, I will turn down business during those times. Or I will, if it's possible, obviously I will try to postpone that business. There's no magic number because every client's so different. I sometimes have worked with 5 clients at one time doing coaching because it's pretty streamlined. It's pretty easy. We're maybe not meeting face to face very often. So it's a lot of phone coaching or Skype coaching. And so I don't necessarily need to have the travel time involved. So it's really, it depends on who you're working with and what the needs are right now. The key is so that you can make sure that you deliver everything you promise on a timely basis to whoever it is that you're working with.
Deb, have you ever fired a coaching client?
I have.
Why?
Yeah, I fired a couple of coaching clients because because they were throwing their company and their boss under the bus all the time in the sessions. And I wasn't there to be a psychotherapist. I wasn't there to be a sounding board for a complainer. I've also fired coaching clients who don't do any of the work because I will go back to the company content and say, I don't feel comfortable taking your money because the investment you're making, they're not willing to do the work. it's a waste of your time and resources. So if they're really negative people that are just constantly complaining and they're not willing to ever become solution oriented, I have fired people for that. And I have fired people that just simply, there's so much apathy and they're so disinterested in actually growing or doing whatever work needs to be done. They're not owning their own stuff. They're blaming everybody else. I go back to the company and say, I don't want you to pay me for this because I'm not going to accomplish much for you.
Yeah, it probably builds a lot of credibility when you do that.
It totally does.
Yeah. So you don't know this yet, Deb, but I'm starting to do a little bit of coaching now through this whole thing that Patina's doing. So I'm new at it, but I'm just sort of curious, if you're coaching somebody and you learn of something else that's going on in the company, are you able to use that information? I mean, does that get tricky? Can you only coach sort of one person inside the company? Or if all of a sudden you hear something that is going on that's impacting the person you're coaching, do you try to use that? It's got to be tricky to try to figure out how could I also help in that next issue that's coming up for the company. I'm just sort of curious about how.
Yeah, it's a really fair question. And so the best way that I think to handle those situations, because that stuff does come up, particularly if there's another individual involved in that issue, you need to obviously keep things very confidential. So I will ask the person I'm coaching, would you like to reach out to your boss or to that individual to see if that individual may also benefit from some coaching or from some facilitated meetings between the two of you? So if it's an issue between another person. So I often will ask my client to reach out to the person who's involved in that issue to maybe recommend me or to see if they think that would benefit if I also worked with those other individuals. And that has happened.
Yeah, I'm sure it's tricky. So Deb, do you have a minimum number of sessions that you typically offer?
I generally start with 4 to 5. 5 is pretty much my standard minimum with most of my coaching clients. Again, it depends on the complexity. The CEO of the manufacturing company that I told you about, he actually hired me to teach him how to be a CEO, which really amazed me because he'd already been a CEO of a number of very successful companies. I coached him for probably 5 years. We would meet for coffee. We lived in the same community and we would meet for coffee at least once a month. And I coached him for years. And so it really depends on what the budget is, what they're looking for. But I try to start with a minimum of 5 because those first sessions are just really trust building. The real work gets done starting with session 3, 4, or 5. And then we evaluate together. Do you need more? Is there more that could benefit you here?
Good. If you could teach me a little bit about being a CEO, that'd be much appreciated too.
I will be happy to.
So just out of curiosity, do your bill rates or the way you bill clients, if it's a retainer model, does that play often into client retention? I'm just sort of curious about how much that might ever come into play about working more consistently with an organization.
So my bill rates are fairly high. And one of the reasons they are is because I've been doing it for a very, very long time. And I have a lot of resources. This goes back to the whole PowerPoint, because if you have really positioned yourself as somebody that provides a lot of value and resources and connections, then you don't ever have to justify your billing rates. Now, that being said, I don't lower my rates for anybody. And the reason is because we need to maintain fee integrity with our clients. We live in small communities. Even big cities are small communities, and people talk to one another. So if you're billing one client at one rate because they're saying, hey, we don't have much budget, and you're billing another client at your maximum rate, you're going to do yourself in pretty quickly because people talk. So you need to be, whatever you set for your billing rate, make sure that you have the experience and the credentials to support what your billing rate is. And don't waffle on your rate from client to client. That will come back to haunt you. I promise you that.
Great. If you get operational requests when you're coaching, like to help with a project, and this isn't send it to Patina, I mean, that's always an option.
Yeah.
But I'm just sort of curious, how do you handle something like that?
I send it to Patina. No,
Very good answer.
And actually, there's a lot of truth to that because we can't try to be all things to all people. Obviously, I'm not a technical person. I don't have those skills. I'm not a engineer. I don't have those skills. And so that's again where you want to have this wealth of resources at your fingertips. And that's why you need a lot of connections and a lot of knowledge, and you need to do your industry homework so that you know who you can help your clients tap into. Patina is a tremendous resource for those kinds of requests. So I love that relationship because yes, I will send my clients to Patina, but there are certainly things that they request that Patina doesn't offer. And so I will send clients to other resources and contacts that I have, depending on what their need is. I have a background in television and media. So if I have clients that are producing a lot of, video or media, I might connect them with some people that I know that are extraordinarily talented in that area. So again, that's where you want to really be positioned as a valued resource. Who do you know that you can send business to? But that can also benefit your clients.
Great. Are all of your coaching clients paid by the companies, or do you have some folks that pay you individually as a person?
About 90% are paid by the companies.
Okay.
That's been my experience. I have had a few that I've coached individually,
Right.
but I find that their resources run dry pretty quickly when
Right.
it's individuals.
Very good. Well, that's our program for today. Deb, is there anything you want to say in closing?
No, I would just again, thank you so much for joining us today. And I would really encourage you to put together your own template and hold yourself accountable for those monthly, all those activities, because I find myself going, oops, I haven't done a webinar this month yet. Oh my gosh, I got to get my blog post out. It's it reminds me to get the job done. And it's that consistent flow of communication that brings the business in.
And I'm sure for people who maybe are just getting into it, it's probably was a little scary when you started a blog. You probably didn't have
Absolutely.
many people reading it. Any advice for people that if they're just starting off with something like a blog, which sounds like it's been very successful for you?
It has. So 2 tips I can give you there. First of all, when you're first starting off with a blog, you need to get permission. You can't add people to your list. So you can't automatically start sending a newsletter or a blog out without people's permission. So the way I get people's permission, the way I got it in the first place was I sent an email out to all of my existing clients telling them that I was going to start a quick tip newsletter, okay, something that was quick and easy to read, and asked, would they like to receive it? Would they like to sample it? So I got permission from them to start my list. Every time I'm out speaking, I invite people to subscribe to my blog. And so what you want to do is keep looking for opportunities to grow it. So here's one of the tricks I use. When I'm speaking at a conference and I've got this big audience out there, I've written books. So what I do is I say, okay, I'm going to give away a couple books today. If you'd like to be in the drawing to get my book at the end of the program, I'll pass a basket around, throw your business card in the basket. I also have a free newsletter, and this is my trick. I say, if you'd like to be in the drawing and you want to get my newsletter, great, just make sure your email address is on the card. If you don't want my newsletter, just write the word no on your business card. And so about maybe 10% of the audience will write no. Maybe the rest didn't hear that I said you have to write no, but they didn't write no. So they've given me permission to send the newsletter. And you know what? Very few of those people ever unsubscribe. So then we go back and manually subscribe those people. So that's how I keep growing my list. And so look for ways to grow your list, but please get permission. And then in your first message, just tell people, this is my first time out with this. Would love your feedback on how I can provide information that would really be of value to you.
Yeah, there's so many great ways to reach the audiences these days. You talked about Twitter and LinkedIn and a lot of other ways. So you've obviously been very successful at that. Deb, I want to really thank you for coming in today with us. I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts about how folks can boost their coaching revenue through increased client retention. I'm sure it was very helpful to our growing coaching and mentoring community of practice here at Patina. Everybody, you'll be receiving a post-event survey in your inbox. If you take a moment to give us your feedback, that'd be terrific. Helps us improve future events like this. And again, I'd ask you to visit patinanation.com to see all the other exciting things that are already there and are coming very soon. If you have any feedback or unanswered questions for Deb, feel free to reach out to her at Deb at loyaltyleader.com. And I'll also ask you to visit her website at loyaltyleader.com to subscribe to her great newsletter, which she just told us about, and purchase her book, Building Customer Loyalty from the Inside Out. I can tell you, I have used Deb's coaching services, and she's spoken to my sales team and organization several times, and I can totally vouch for her. She's awesome. So thanks again for being a valuable member of the Patina Nation.
This has been a presentation of the Patina Nation. To watch more content like this or for more information, please visit us online at www.patinanation.com.